Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Rimler, and today I will be talking about part 2 of the book, which is about personal skills. The first chapter of part 2 is about listening, which I believe is one of the biggest and most important chapters and skills to have in the workforce. So starting off with listening at work, listening has been proven to be the most important communication skill in terms of job and career success, productivity, upward mobility, and organizational effectiveness. Through listening, you are able to create trustworthy relationships that are transparent and breed loyalty. When asked 1,000 executives to list the ideal skills for manager, listening was ranked number one. The leaders who have their employees' best interests at heart is because they truly listen to them. You have to be able to listen well if you're going to motivate people to work for you. People tend to pay more attention to sending messages than receiving them. Faulty assumption number one, effective communication is the sender's responsibility. It's both the sender's and receiver's shared responsibility for effective communication. It's important for the sender to clearly communicate and monitor the effectiveness of their message and attentive to receivers' feedback. Receivers should paraphrase and ask questions to ensure they fully understood the message being communicated. Faulty assumption 2, listening is passive. Listening is not just being quiet and absorbing the words of the speaker. Many actually get that mistaken, which is actually hearing. Hearing is the reception of sound, while listening is the attachment of meaning to the sound. Active listeners maintain eye contact with speaker, nod their heads and smile, provide feedback, and reduce distractions such as cell phones. Faulty assumption number 3, talking has more advantages. It seems that the speakers control conversation while the listeners are the followers. This could make it pretty easy for professionals to miss important information. For example, the more a doctor talks, the more likely you could get off track and fail to address the concerns raised by the patients. Faulty assumption number 4, listening is a natural ability. In a study, evidence suggests that people overestimate their ability to listen. Even though listening might seem to be a natural ability, that does not mean that most people do it well. Barriers to effective listening, environmental barriers. For example, people trying to talk over each other at the atrium makes it pretty difficult for people to hear and process messages, but not all environmental barriers involve sound. Incoming phone calls, text messages, notifications, and emails can all be distractions from focusing on a conversational partner. You cannot eliminate all environmental barriers, but you can often manage them. Suggest moving your conversation to a quieter location, mute your phone, or just put it away. Physiological barriers. For some, poor listening result from an actual hearing deficiency, such as hearing loss. Listeners can process information at a much quicker rate than speakers. Once recognized, these deficiencies can usually be treated. Another challenge comes from, like I said, listeners can process information at a rate of approximately 500 words per minute, while the rate of speech for most speakers is about 125 words per minute. While this is quite some time for mental spare, which we should use to explore the speaker's ideas, it is also very easy for our minds to wander and just lose track of what is going on. Psychological barriers, there's preoccupation, message overload, egocentrism, ethnocentrism, and fear of appearing ignorant. Out of those 5, I picked the 2 that I believe are the most relevant to us, also because of time that I get for the presentation. So message overload comes from a world filled with smartphones, tablets, laptops, and etc., which leaves us with challenges called multi-communication. This makes it difficult to listen because people keep dropping in and out and give you quick messages. While many students pride themselves on their ability to multitask, evidence suggests that people aren't too effective when they work on multiple tasks at the same time. And then there's egocentrism, which is a common reason for poor listening because of your belief that your own ideas are more important or more valuable than those of others. This behavior could also distance people from who you work with. The different listening styles. Research has shown that people have a general listening style or a particular motivation for listening. Not everyone listens the same. Relational listening is primarily focused and concerned with the emotional connection with others. They're more interested in understanding and supporting people than evaluating them. Analytical listening is more concerned with attending to full message before coming to judgment. They usually want to hear details and analyze issues from a variety of perspectives. Task-oriented listening are most interested in getting the job done. Efficiency is their biggest concern. Unfortunately, their impatience can sometimes strain relationships because they're generally not good at responding. Critical listening has a strong desire to evaluate messages with the purpose of accepting or rejecting them. They tend to focus on the accuracy and consistency of a message. Listening more effectively. Social scientists have identified 2 levels of listening, mindless and mindful. Mindless listening occurs when we react to messages of others automatically and routinely without really thinking about it. And mindful listening involves giving careful and thoughtful attention and responses to the message we receive. Listening to understand. Examination shows that we often focus on tasks, mentally arguing with the speaker, daydreaming, thinking about other tasks, and so on, when we would claim we understand what is being said. Verbal messages. Encoding and decoding described in the book is inherently imperfect. Listeners could understand the meaning of every word perfectly, but still interpret a message completely different from the intended meaning. Clarity and ambiguity. Equivocal terms are words that are two different but equally acceptable or common meanings that could cause a misunderstanding or confusion. This means the more concrete statements provide specific details or description. For example, the job will take longer, which is a high level abstraction, over we should use the job will take 48 hours to complete, which is a low level abstraction. Also, use slang with caution. If you can, just try and avoid slang at the job unless it's a slang that is related to the job and everyone working with you knows the meaning. Nonverbal communication. Words are not the only way we communicate. Nonverbal behavior always has communicative value. You may not always intentionally send nonverbal messages. Every appearance, movement, facial expression, and nuances of your voice have potential conveying meaning. To improve your nonverbal effectiveness, monitor your non-behavioral or nonverbal behavior, demonstrate interest in others, and observe conventions. Some nonverbal conventions or culture. In Northern Europe, you can expect to greet associates with a handshake, while in the Mediterranean countries and Latin America, a hug and even a ritual kiss or two might be appropriate. Interpersonal skills and success. Building positive relationship is crucial to a successful job/career. In a survey that was given to millennial employees showed how overwhelmingly important it is to have interpersonal communication in today's workforce. Affirming dignity, showing respect to others is a major ingredient or social intelligence. More than likely, if people describe a bad communication experience at work, it has something to do with being ignored, offended, belittled, and disrespected. Enhancing organizational climate. The quality of communication is an organization, affects the way people feel about their work and about another. Organizational climate describes the nature of relationships in work groups. Sharing feedback. Some types of feedback are pleasure, whereas others are necessary but tough to deliver. Giving praise. The more quickly you can provide positive feedback, the more meaningful it will be. Almost any sincere praise will be appreciated. Raising difficult issues, though it might be not the most pleasant thing, but you sometimes have to communicate about problematic behavior. Focus on solving the problems, not controlling others. Be honest, do not manipulate, and demonstrate an attitude of equality. Dealing with difficult people and situations. Incivility is the exchange of seemingly inconsequential, inconsiderate words and deeds that violate the conventional standards of workplace conduct. Workplace bullying is more intense, malicious, ongoing, and damaging. Sexual harassment, there's two types. There's quid pro quo, which includes directly or indirectly threatening to promote someone for exchange of dating or sexual behaviors or sexual favors. Hostile work environment, which can be verbal or nonverbal behavior that makes someone that works with you uncomfortable because of an intimidating, offensive, or hostile environment. And an example I can give about that I learned in the class is, for example, one of your coworkers who's a male and you're a female, if he has a poster or a calendar, for example, and there's nudity on there, that could be an example of hostile work environment because it could make you uncomfortable with that being like where you work. Managing conflict. Causes of conflict fall into several categories: the topic at hand, the process, relational issues, ego, identity issues, and privacy issues. Approaches to conflict. There's avoiding, accommodating, competing, collaborating, and compromising. Handling conflict constructively. Negotiating strategies and outcomes. There's the win-lose approach. There's a lose-lose and a win-win. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Types of interviews. The information gathering interview. You should define your goal for the interview as clearly as possible. Who you interview is likely to shape the value of what you learn. The employment interview explores how well a candidate might fit a job. And you can do that by scanning the internet for openings, and filing an application is often the most effective way to find a job. The performance appraisal interview, a special kind of interview in which superiors and subordinates meet at a regularly scheduled intervals to discuss the quality of the subordinate's performance. Interviewing strategies. Planning the interview. So you want to define the goal, identify and analyze the other party, prepare a list of topics you want to talk about and discuss, choose the best interview structure, consider possible questions, arrange the setting, and then, The ethics of interviewing, obligations of the interviewer. Business communicators will follow several guidelines when conducting an interview. Only make promises that you are willing and able to keep. Keep confidences. Allow the interviewee to make free responses. Treat every interviewee with respect. And obligations of the respondent. Do not misrepresent the fact of your position, and do not waste the interviewer's time. That is it for part 2 of the book, Personal Skills. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, please comment down in the comments, I guess, and I will hopefully be able to answer your questions. Thank you.